everyone. Welcome to Zoom 101. So excited to have you here this morning. It is Friday. I hope you guys all have your jeans on. It's Friday Jean Day, right? Funny, right? Because when we are doing Zoom, it doesn't matter. We could have our sweats on all day long. But welcome, welcome. So glad to see you, and I'm just so honored that you're taking this time from your schedule to learn about Zoom and really connecting with your students. So my name is Beth Clarke. I am the Senior Director of Digital Leadership and Learning at CISA 2. I want you to know that we have two wonderful Yodas, that's what we call them, who are helping out in the chat and with any technical questions that you have. Valerie and Mitchell from CISA 2 are also with us today as well. So also, I want you to know that we will be recording this, just so that you know. So if you don't mind your video on, you can keep it on or off. We'll talk a little bit about that, some norms. And the other piece before we get going, hopefully, Val, were you able to get this into the chat?
It is linked in the chat, and I'm going to link it one more time. So if you want to if you're not opening the bit.ly, you can just click on the chat link and it will take you there too.
Yeah, so when you get into Zoom, typically what it does is it opens up your entire screen, so it's full screen. So you may need to hit escape on your keyboard, and then you'll be able to find and navigate to your browser. And if you just click on that link too, it will bring it up for you. What I like to do when I am Zooming with anybody is to use a collaborative document. So you're going to see how we're going to access that today. You don't have to do anything with it right now. You'll see on the bottom of the document, after the table, you'll see a bunch of resources, and we'll talk about those resources as we go through. So trying to keep this within an hour, because that's what it is. It's the Tech Power Hour. And so we're going to get going. What I want you to know that as we go, oh, well, I mean, we have to start with a funny. I have to share this with you. So a colleague of mine shared this, and, you know, we've got to keep humor in the air whenever we can get it, right? So I don't know if you have seen this, but it is this dude talking or singing two Broadway medleys about the coronavirus.
Wash your hands, wash your hands, and please cancel all your plans. If you're going to the store, be sure you're buying food in cans. Use Purell and use soap, which you already do, I hope. And be sure to social distance at 6 feet. Don't have resistance. Stay in.
Okay, so it goes on. You'll see too, if I shared the link on your resources, so you don't have to go searching it. It's actually on that page, the Zooming 101 sheet. It's on there. Anyway, he goes through all of these different Broadway songs and adds these very clever lyrics. But what I want you to notice when you're watching him, I want you to notice his facial expressions and his exaggerated body language, because when you are connecting with your students, I want you to keep that in mind. So sometimes, you know, I'll get close to the camera or come back to the camera, you know, so like as you're talking, try to keep that in mind, because it keeps your kids engaged as well. So check that out when you have time. It is funny, and I wanted to share that with you today. So just some logistics. So best practices when you guys start using Zoom. And so our goals today is for you to get started using Zoom. So you're going to see right now you are in a Zoom window, and at the bottom you're going to have a menu of items, and you'll see audio and video. Those two are really important, that you know how those function. Basically, when you are the host of a meeting, you're going to mute all of your participants when they're coming in, and we'll talk about some norms with that. Today, we have you all muted, and we are asking that any questions or comments, we really invite those, use the chat. The chat is right here, so if you don't have that pop up on your screen yet, go ahead and click on that chat button on the bottom, and that will bring it up, and you'll be able to see all of those comments and questions there. And your video, we talked about that yesterday. Actually, we had to turn off video because of bandwidth. I want you to be aware of that too. If you are in a remote area or have unstable internet at times, you might request to turn that off, but if at all possible, because you are connecting and we want that human face-to-face interaction as much as possible, leave the video on. Okay, so I'm just encouraging you to do that. That is why this is such a great tool. So Zoom norms, I will be sharing my screen for the entire presentation today. But when you're with your students, you certainly can share that option. You and your students can share screens, so if they have something they want to share, they certainly can. Use the chat. Obviously, we talked about that. We will be breaking out. I want you to actually experience a breakout room. So we will be breaking out and you will have an opportunity to experience that. And then we're using that collaborative doc. I really encourage that if it's not a doc, if it's a, you know, a slide deck, whatever, so that there's some interaction, especially when you're teaching. And by the way, this is Zoom 101, but if you want some more depth into how to use Zoom for teaching and learning, I did a webinar yesterday and that's on our website, and the Yodas, I'm sure, will be putting that in the chat. So take a look at that too, because that goes in a little bit more in depth of the teaching and learning tools and how to manage that. So what I want us to do is take a look at something, and it is on, actually, I think I have it up here. It is on your resources. And this is something I put together because there's so much out there about, okay, you know, what do I do for video norms, whatever. I put this together just for you, for teachers. And this is absolutely can be for administrators too. So the first thing you want to do, and I can't stress this enough right now, I'm getting a bunch of emails about Zoom and, you know, what are the policies behind Zoom? What's the data security and privacy for students? So this, I need you to understand this, okay? So here I'm gonna get closer. What I want you to understand is that with Zoom, this is a teacher tool. This is for you. We do not want students creating their own Zoom account. No, no, no. So on their student accounts, we do not want them creating a Zoom account. There's no reason for it. They don't need to video chat to other people. Don't encourage that. If they do it, obviously we have no control on their private emails or whatever. They're FaceTiming already. They are video conferencing way before we were video conferencing. But I don't want any district to encourage student accounts. There's no need for it. So this is what I'm telling you. In Zoom, you are going to use this as a teacher tool. You create your account. And I'll show you how to do that. You're going to create a link that you will share with your students. So this is exactly what we did for this webinar. So you got a link from the host, right? And so you were able to get into my room. You had permission to get into my room. And so now we're all learning together. That's exactly what you want to do with your students. Also know that I'm going to be putting together some video conference, not only norms, but video conference guidance for districts, and that's going to go out later today. So just know that that's coming for your district. Also, okay, so speaking of that, with video conferencing, you need to get a parent consent. I really encourage that of anybody who is 13 and under, that you are getting, and this should be through your district, hopefully, and I'll put that in the guidance, that all parents are consenting. And the other thing, number 2, is that you need to, on your first Zoom meeting, encourage parents to attend with their students so they can actually see this tool, be a part of that whole experience. And the first Zoom that you do is not content. The first Zoom that you do is connecting, saying hi, do a dance together, do go noodle, read a story, anything like that, but it's just to connect. So with all of that in mind, after you get parent consent through whatever communication tools you're using, email, phone, Seesaw, Google Classroom, whatever, schedule a meeting. So what we're going to do is, this is the preparation piece, and we're going to go through that preparation. So we're going to schedule a meeting today. I'll show you how to do that. You're going to send the invite link. Okay. Preset mute. Okay. We'll talk about that when we do meetings. But this is where I want you guys to think about, what do you want the students to see, right? So today I'm kind of cash. I have on my little ISTE shirt. What are you going to pick out to wear? And, you know, we encourage it to be work appropriate, right? The other thing is, make sure you check your technology prior to this. So I encourage all of you to do test Zooms with your teachers and anybody, your family members, you know, invite your family members, do a Zoom. But check that technology, make sure that it's working. And then check your lighting. So right now I'm by a window. So if I feel like, oh my gosh, you know, there's too much backlighting, I'm a big silhouette, I can close that up. And hopefully you can see me clearer. I mean, it's totally up to you, but check your lighting. Make sure that you're not just this black blob that's on the screen. And then check how you're framed in the camera. So you'll be able to do that as soon as you open up your meeting yourself. You're going to see yourself like right there. So the first thing you'll see is, oh, how am I framed? What does the lighting look like? And then check your background. We want to make sure that this is really appropriate kind of background, not too busy, you know, but also I just want you to keep in mind too, that when you get consent from your parents, you're going to be talking about this tool, and you really want to make sure that wherever the students set up, so if they have a Chromebook, an iPad, they're using their phone, they can use any of those, any device will access the link. Make sure that you are only seeing what is appropriate in their house as well. So as you talk to your families, make sure that they are setting up their students where, you know, there's appropriate background too. We are, you know, when you're Zooming, think about this, you're kind of going into homes. It's almost like a home visit, but not. But, you know, making sure that there's nothing around the student that we have to mandatory report. That's important to be thinking about. I know it's heavy stuff, but okay. So the last thing about parent consent is many times what I do, and I suggest this to districts, is an opt-out. So basically you're going to be saying, we're going to be using this tool to connect with your students. Please contact us if you have any questions or concerns. So something like that, otherwise you might go crazy. It's like permission slips 101, right? So, all right, so this sheet is in your resources for you. Now, I go into during the meeting as well, so being on time is really important. You might want to set a notification on your phone. Like sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I have a Zoom meeting. You know, it's not like you're going from door to door. You're actually like, got to get on your computer. So make sure that you set some notifications for yourself. Now, setting norms, the one thing I want to talk about when you're doing a virtual meeting is you can set your norms. So like I set some norms for us today. I'd like us to use the chat if you have questions, comments. This is how, you know, the whole thing is going to roll. Now, students may not know how to set norms yet because they haven't used this tool. So after your first check-in and you're kind of playing around with tools with your students, you may invite them to create the community of online learning, right? Just like you would in your classroom. So what are your standard operating procedures? What are your expectations? What are your norms? Whatever they understand, you know, how are you building that community online? So the rest of this, you guys take a look at. You'll see there's some good advice there. And then the last thing I just want to make sure that you all know before we get into our settings is that I highly, highly discourage all of you from recording. And the reason that is because number one, we have student faces and names up there. No, right? We don't need to be recording that. Number two, what if something does pop up in the background? We don't need to have a recording so that something, you know, you're using this at a later time. What I highly suggest instead of recording the meeting is that if there are students who cannot participate in that meeting, if you are delivering content, now if it's just a check-in, it's a check-in, but if you're delivering content, then what I highly suggest is that you use something like Screencastify or Loom, any kind of screencast where it's capturing you talking through the instructional pieces, and post that, communicate that to your families through whatever communication platform you have. Okay, so keep all of that in mind. If you are an administrator and you'd like to record your meeting, just like we're recording this for later viewing, and the adults totally are like, yeah, go for it. Absolutely use the record function, yes. But with students, no, stay away from that. All right, are we ready? Any questions, Val, for us before we dig in?
Yeah, so most of the questions are sort of individual, but a couple of things that we will be getting to is that you can record Zoom to publish on and share in Google. And then just some technical questions. So if you're in Zoom and you get a black screen or something goes awry, typically just closing the meeting and launching it again will take care of things. So that's a tech support kind of consideration. Can students record it? Only the host can record. So you would be the host as the teacher and you would do the recording. Also, just a couple little reminders, your video and audio, if it's not working, the first place to check on the panel where you saw the chat window, if it's on the bottom of your screen, it would be on the far left. There's a little button that says, or a little icon that says mute and start video. If you click on the up arrows next to those, you will see that you get the settings. So if you're not getting sound, that's the first place to check, is make sure that your speakers are selected. If you're not seeing your video, make sure your camera is selected. And so those are just some initial troubleshooting thoughts. I think that's it, Beth. The most have been just otherwise individual kind of supports.
Okay, perfect. That's awesome. Thank you, Val. All right, so I always like to go into why we would use this tool. So I want you to know that we need each other right now. Yesterday we were on a Zoom. I had people engaging in an activity, and their responses in the chat really like, oh my gosh, like I'm thinking about it right now, and it gets me kind of emotional. So like we need each other right now more than ever. So this is a great way to connect. You know, this is where you can deliver content synchronously. And so when you're probably hearing this, asynchronous, synchronous, what does that mean? So this is synchronous, meaning that we are connecting at the same time. Now remember, not all kids might be able to connect at the same time. So that asynchronous, using a screencast like I was talking about previously, would be another great way for kids to connect and deliver content in that way. So this is synchronous. So we're seeing each other and interacting. And then it's small groups. I love this. We're going to get out in breakout groups today. I just want you to experience that in one-on-one sessions. So we're going to be building. I'm kind of modeling what you would do too if you were actually delivering some kind of a content lesson. So our objectives today, our standards, our goals, whatever you want to use, our targets, we're going to build your conferencing, video conferencing skills and learn some of the functions behind it, all in 1 power hour. So if I am talking fast, which I do not recommend when you're on Zoom, please go to the recording and you can go through and pace it by yourself in whatever pace you need. So we're going to take a look at this. I want you to know that I try to use this TITAC method, and in our resources, there's a video with Banyan Global Learning on it, and it talks through each of these sections. But really, as you guys are starting to think about what does it mean to actually engage with students online, these are some really great things. So check out the video on there. You'll see it in your resources. But you know, your teachers engaging, and effective, and there's meaningful interaction. What does that look like? Technology is only used when it's the best tool, right? And it's driven by the learning goals. The presentation is pleasing, and there's open communication with parents and with students. All right, let's do this, you guys. We are going to now go to our settings. Those of you who have not, of course, my dogs have just now entered the room, which may happen to you. Oh, look, we have some interaction. if you have not signed up for Zoom yet, I want you to use the link that's on this resource. Do you see this right here where it says Zoom School Sign In? Right now, Zoom is offering us a good deal. They've lifted the 40 minutes, so we can use Zoom for an unlimited amount of time. And so if you need it longer than 40 minutes, it's there for you if you sign up through the school sign in. There are some things Zoom doesn't have, and we'll talk a little bit about that and why you would use Google Meet instead. But we'll take a look at this. We're just really excited that they've offered that for us. And sign in if you haven't yet. And you can do that while I'm talking if you want, or just pay attention and do it after, up to you. So right now I'm actually going to go to my incognito screen, and I'm going to take a look at some settings here for you. So what you want to do when you go to that link is you want to sign up for Zoom, and it's going to ask you how you want to sign up, and you can sign up through Google authentication, which I love. It's just an easy connection then. And when you sign up, this is the first thing that you will see. This is your dashboard in Zoom. So in your dashboard, when this pops up, it's like, do you want to schedule a new meeting? So this is how you, as a teacher, you have this dashboard. This is why this is a teacher tool. You are going to be the host of your meeting, and this is where you schedule it. But before we get into scheduling meetings, I want you to know that over here on the left side, we have something called settings. And there are a million gazillion settings. And so I'm going to just talk through some of these that I feel will be important for you. I also want you to know that I did a little screen capture. They're a little blurry, but I think you can get the gist of them. And it's in our Zooming 101 document. If you scroll down, you'll see that I've captured my settings so that you can kind of just like, okay, this is what she had hers set at. There are a few though, because I don't typically use this with students, that I want you to be aware of, that you may want to change compared to what I have screen captured for you. So first of all, when you schedule meetings, do you want your video, meaning your picture, your video, to pop up right away or not? And do you want your participants? Now, best practice out there with video conferencing says to turn these off. You know what? If you're meeting with your kids, leave it on. I mean, it's totally up to you. Or the thing is, the first time that you meet with your students, they're not going to know how to even turn on their video or how to unmute themselves yet. So, I mean, that initial, like, if you are there and your face is there and the students pop in, you're going to see these huge grins and just make you feel so good. So I would suggest for your first meeting, absolutely keeping these on for that initial connection, but you can certainly turn those off for later meetings. So I want to tell you one thing about Zoom right now. So it's saying telephone and computer audio. I want you to know right now, because there's so many people, there's such a demand for Zoom, that with that free account with education, they have disabled the conference calling option for you. Now, if you have the pro version, so if your district has actually paid for Zoom, you definitely have that call-in option. But in your free version, you do not. So this is where I'm going to just jump in and mention Google Meet. So Google Meet, if you are using that in your district, I always say Zoom and Google Meet, have both of them in your back pocket, right? So in Google Meet, you actually automatically get a phone number that you can share with parents. So if they don't have access to a computer or Wi-Fi, but they have access to data and a phone, they can still connect, but they can't connect via video, right? So it would just be like a phone call, but at least they're, participating. So join before the host, you want that off. This stuff we're going to skip. Require a password, certainly you can keep that on, but what it does is in your Zoom link, don't worry, you don't have to share a password and it gets crazy like that. It actually adds that password to the Zoom link, and so only those people who have the link can access the meeting. You probably won't be doing instant, you'll be scheduling everything. I just want to keep going down here. Mute. So do you want to mute participants upon entry? So typically I do that. Otherwise you're getting, especially with our students, just mute them right away, because otherwise it's chaos. And I'll show you how to manage participants, and you can unmute at different times. You don't want to hear things that you don't want to hear, right? This stuff we're going to keep going. Chat. This is what I want you to know about chat. So go ahead and turn that chat on if you want. Maybe not the first one. Maybe it's just saying hello and doing your dance or reading a story, and then start introducing chat. I typically have it on, obviously, because it helps us. Prevent participants from saving chat. I would definitely have that on, right? Private chat. This, you guys, you definitely want this off with your students. You do not need students private chatting to each other at all. We can private chat, like Mitchell and Valerie can private chat me. It's like our back channel, like, hey, let's hold up and let's look at the chat or whatever. But you don't want students doing that, so turn that off. And then auto saving, they don't need to save the chat unless you want them to. Play sound. Okay, I'm not even going to get into that. You can have that. It'll just ding when people come in. We're going to keep going until I see something that is really pertinent for you as a teacher. Screen sharing. Here we go. I want you to know about screen sharing. Now remember, I'm going through this fast. You're going to get the recording, and you can slow me down as slow as you want. So who can share? This is, I have all participants. Now, maybe you don't want all participants to share right away, and you just want you to share. So you can just click on host. So if you have this clicked on, like all participants, if you don't tell kids, they're not going to do it. Or who knows, maybe they would. But who can start sharing when somebody else is sharing? So let's say that I'm sharing. We don't want all participants just to jump in and take over my screen, right? So I would definitely encourage you just to have this on host only, so kids are not taking over your screen. That just means right now, you guys could all take over my screen if I had all participants on. All right, we're going down. Annotation you want one on, whiteboard you want on, remote control you can have on. This one, nonverbal feedback, I want you to turn that on. And then allow remove participants to rejoin. This is totally up to you. You guys can actually, as a classroom management piece, you can actually knock some well, that doesn't sound good, knock students out, but you can actually remove students from the meeting. And so if you want to remove students, but then they have access to rejoin, you can have that. You want breakout rooms on, put those on. We're going to show you that. Closed captioning. So I want you to know, this is where, again, you're going to go to Google Meet. So closed captioning is, it works best if you have a third-party vendor who is doing the closed captioning in Zoom, but it does cost you something. So I would say that if you need closed captioning, there's two ways of doing it. Number one, use Google Meet. You'll get closed captioning immediately. As you're talking, it pops up. You click on CC, boom, you've got closed captioning. Here in Zoom, it enables you to invite a person to actually type while you are talking. Well, guess what? I just feel like that is not as useful as a tool. But if you are, let's say that you have your own private meeting just by yourself and you're recording yourself, because you can do that. Like right now, I could be just recording myself talking to you all. Right? Like I'm pretending like I'm talking to my class. If you do something like that and you want closed captioning, you can actually, in your recording, in your settings, you can download the video and then upload it to YouTube, which will then, you can add closed captioning. Okay, that's an advanced feature. Sorry I got in the weeds there, but just so that you know. You can contact any of us at CISA2 to help you with that if you need it. All right, so moving on. Let's see, virtual background, super cool. If you guys want, turn that on. Then you don't even have to worry about your background. There's a setting that you can actually add a virtual background, which is kind of fun. You guys can pretend you're in Hawaii or whatever. And then let's see the rest. Attention tracking, this is the only other thing. Oh, two things. if you, let's say that you're a high school teacher and you are actually, going through some content and you want to make sure that everybody is paying attention and they are actually on the Zoom tab, you can actually track their attention. You can turn that on, and I typically work with adults, right? So I don't typically have that on, but you can actually track like when people leave your Zoom meeting and are on another tab. The waiting room, if you want this option on, you can have, just like you guys kind of hung out in a waiting room for a little bit, turn that on, and then your students won't be coming into the room until you are ready. So either way, you can turn that on or off. Attendees join before. Okay, I think that's it in our settings. So we're at 11:32. We've just gone through settings. I'm coming back up here because this is where I want you to see the recording. So if you do, remember, you're just in your room by yourself. You've set up a meeting. You're talking to your students by yourself. You can certainly record, and this is where you'll find them. And then you won't have webinars. Well, I'm not sure. But anyway, now, if I were to schedule a meeting, this is where I schedule a meeting. I can click on meetings here or schedule a meeting here. So if I click on schedule a meeting, it's going to pop this up. This is where you are going to put in the information specific to the meeting you are scheduling. So what we just did in settings is that we have set up kind of our default settings, so that when we go into meetings, we have these default settings. But I want you to know that you will have options while you are setting up that specific meeting. So here I would put in my name. We are going to do test 3 today. And you can put in a description. So anybody you send the link to will see that description. You can do that. This is where you set up when your meeting will be. So if I'm going to set up a meeting for today, but I'm going to go at 1:30 and an hour long. Now, you guys will not see this 40-minute pop-up. This is on my personal account, just so that you know, so I didn't go through the school thing, so don't worry about this. We're going to skip that. This is important to make sure that you set your time zone. You want to make sure you're on Central Time, so make sure you set that. And then if you're going to meet every week or something, Zoom can schedule that as well. It will generate automatically your meeting ID. And then do you require a meeting password or not? It will add it to the link. You don't have to do that here. It's already in your settings. Now check this out, you guys. We just talked about whether we want the video on or off. So what Zoom is saying, you can totally have your video on or off right here, specific to this meeting. All right. And then here is our I have telephone. I mean, you're not going to have telephone, just click on both anyway. And then look at these meeting options here. So you can enable your participants to join before the host. I would say not for your students. Keep them in the waiting room or just wait until you have your meeting up and then they can all pop in. This you can set up your mute upon entry, enable waiting room, breakout room, pre-assign. I want you to see this because we're going to go into breakout rooms quickly here in a minute. And you can actually pre-assign your students. So you can upload your students from, let's say that you have your Excel sheet with your student names on it. You can upload it here and you can create rooms. So I can create different rooms prior to them getting in there. So if I have specific needs and I want to differentiate my instruction and this group is going to work together and this group is going to work together, maybe it's a workshop model, whatever, you can do that. And then I'm not going to record anything. So I'm going to save this. By the way, so those administrators who are out there, if you do plan on recording, this free version will not allow you to record to the cloud. It needs to record locally to your computer, just so you know that. If you have the pro version, you certainly can. All right, take a look. This is my meeting now. I'm all set to go. Here's my meeting. I'm going to just show you what it looks like here's my test 3. This is my dashboard. If I want to take a look at my meeting and be like, oh my gosh, I need to invite my students. What do I do? Well, I can add this, and I do this all the time, it's just add it to my Google Calendar. Whatever calendar that you have, you certainly can add it to your calendar so that you don't forget and you'll get a notification, right? We talked about that. This is the URL. So let's say that you are using Seesaw, Google Classroom, your LMS, Schoology, Canvas, whatever you're using email. This is the link that you can copy and send to your parents. This will get to your parents and your students, and they can just click on this link, boom, they are in your meeting. Remember prior to when I was talking in the beginning, I talked about how you can use an iPad, a phone, blah, blah, blah. I want you to know that there's a Zoom app out there. So if students are accessing this through their phone, or if you even want to do it on a phone, download or install that Zoom app. It's so easy. It's great. You can actually schedule meetings from that too, if you want. But students can access it through the link no matter what they have. They don't even need the app. They can access it through the browser too. I want you to know over here on the right, copy the invitation. So this is actually the whole invitation. You can copy this and send it out too. Now, your students and families might be like, oh, do I need all of this? What do I do? What I would do is copy this link right here and then put in your message, some instructions for them to access. Just click on this link with whatever device you have and, we'll connect, or you can talk about your audio. Actually, Mitchell sent you something prior to this webinar today that might help too. You can use a model like that as well. Like here's some troubleshooting or how you get into Zoom. I want you to know too that when people click on your Zoom invite, it's probably going to ask them to download the Zoom. It's not here on the bottom. I hope you guys can see this, but it's a Zoom console, and you can access your meetings by this little icon on the bottom as well. So as people are, accessing Zoom, it'll ask to do that little download too. Okay, moving on. I can start this meeting at any time right here. I can start it here. I can go to my console down here. I can click on my Google Calendar event. This will actually go to my personal event, but I don't want that. Let me show you what it looks like. You can actually connect your Zoom account to your calendar in those settings that I was going through. And I don't have my calendar up here, but I'm not going to take the time. But what you can do is actually schedule out from your Google Calendar as well. So take a look at last Friday. I did a Zoom that was a little bit longer, and it was called Video Conferencing Tools. Dig into that too, because I talk about that towards the beginning. Okay, and so you can take a look at how you connect Zoom to your calendar and how you can schedule right out of your calendar. I love it. It's a one click, and you've created the link. Boom, send that to your parents. Okay. All right. So that is settings, and what I want us to do right now is, I'm going to go back to, no, that's not what I want. Right now you are in, okay, forget that. Right now you are in our Zoom, and I'm sharing the screen with you right now. I want you to note that I'm going to stop my share just for a second, because I think I freaked out some people yesterday when I took myself off of sharing. This is how your meeting will start. It will start just like this without your shared screen. So it will start with whoever's in the meeting, and you'll see whoever's talking typically is the big person. Do I want to say that? The big image on your screen. And up on the right top, you'll see a gallery view, and you guys should all be able to see that. And you'll be able to, if you click on your gallery view, you'll be able to see all of the participants, so all of your students. So that's the glory of this. You can see all of your students, and it's just like Hollywood Squares. Okay, so all of you can do that. I'm going to share my screen again. And when I share, you're going to see whatever I have on my screen. Okay. And you'll be able to take a look at the webinar that was from yesterday about Zoom with teaching and learning, and you'll be able to see too the different sharing options. But today what I want to show you is something that I'm going to have us take a look at a video, and I want you to see, let's see if we can bring her back up. I want you specifically to know how to break out in Zoom. I'm in my Zoom meeting right now, and a couple things: breakout and manage your participants. I'm going to have her talk to you about managing participants once you're in your Zoom, because that's really important that you have a handle. Once you get in the Zoom, when you click on your meeting and you start it, this is what you're going to see, and you can actually manage participants. I can't show you that, but she can, because you can't see my menu or my options on my screen. But let me have her show you this quickly, and I'll kind of move her through. Okay. I also want to model how to use video too. You can certainly use video in your Zoom meetings.
Participants tab down here. I open this menu. We're going to come back to this, but I want to click on the more drop down to the bottom right corner, and this is where I can turn on.
I'm going to move her back a little bit. I want you to see the participants, what she clicked on. So all of you in your tab, you can see participants, right? Mine
I can come back down here, and I can invite someone from this control. So the first thing you'll notice is that it shows my contacts, and these are my Zoom contacts. You can add people to your Zoom contacts list.
We're moving her forward. I'm doing my own.
All right, the next thing is really important: how to manage your participants. And we're going to talk about this in detail, but the one thing that I really wanted to show you first is the waiting room. So by clicking on the Manage Participants tab down here, I open this menu. We're going to come back to this, but I want to click on the More drop down to the bottom right corner, and this is where I can turn on the waiting room if I don't have it already turned on. So I turn it on, and now I can see that my friend Ashley is waiting to come into my meeting. So when she's in the waiting room, I will receive a little like a noise in my ear letting me know that someone's.
I'm going to pause her with this up. So the important pieces are this: the waiting room, whatever. We talked about that. But what I want you to know is that with each participant, you get these options here as a host. You will be able to mute. So if somebody is talking out of turn, you can mute. You can mute all, which is right down here: mute all, unmute all. You can, with this drop-down menu, this is where you can, well, actually I'll have her get to that so you can see it. But that's where you can remove a student if you need to. Hopefully not. Everybody's so excited to see each other. And you can see some other options here, but this is the nonverbal feedback that we'll talk about. Actually, I talked about it yesterday, so get that webinar because we won't have time to talk about it. But you can do nonverbal feedback with your students so that they can like raise their hand, or they can give you the thumbs up or yes or no, so you can get some feedback while using Zoom. All right, let's move her on.
We were earlier today. I'm going to jump down to our advanced settings, and that's where we found waiting room right here. And if you have our pro license, take a look. You can click.
We don't, so we're moving on. Here we go.
Mute, and then I've got quite a few more options that pop up here under that more drop down. Let's talk about video. So
okay, so this is that more drop down that we were talking about. So as a host, you in your free account, you will not be able to make other people co-hosts. But I highly encourage you to get other adults on. So like if you have a co-teacher, if your principal wants to pop in and say hi to your students, any other adults, if you have paraprofessionals who could help with these, it would be fantastic to have them support. So you can't actually make somebody else a co-host, which is fine, but they can participate and help you manage. You can actually make somebody else the host though if you want. So if you need another adult that is in your Zoom meeting, you can actually have them become the host, and then they have all of the controls. So you don't want students to allow record, just ignore all of this. But here are those other options I wanted you to see. All right. So that is managing participants. So you have those options as a host. Remember, I want you to practice. So today at some time when we're done, I actually want you to schedule a meeting for yourself, or you can actually, up in your settings, you can actually just click on host a meeting, and immediately you'll have a meeting set up for you. And I want you to practice this. So the next thing, because we're at 11:47, I really want us to take a look at breakout rooms. Before we do that though, Val, how are we doing?
We are doing well. Just lots of sort of individual technical questions. For example, sometimes when you go into a different window, it will minimize your Zoom. So how do you get that back? And there's a little icon at the bottom of your screen, and you can see it on Beth's window. It's a circle with a camera, the blue circle with a camera. So clicking on that is where you can relaunch it. Also, some questions about the difference between the free version and the pro version. And let's see what else. Oh, and some questions about using the Zoom app. Whether or not you, as the host, when you launch a meeting, let's see, I'm sorry, one second. So she's saying that she made some appointments under her Zoom app. When she goes into a different computer, it doesn't recognize her as the host. It requires her to launch it. So yeah, sometimes you need to go in and then just launch the meeting if you're on a different computer, because you might not be logged in with your Google settings.
That is
Those are the big
exactly right.
things. Yeah.
Thank you, Val. And that has happened to me several times where I'm like, oh my gosh, why am I not the host? It's like, what happened? Well, it's because you just like joined the meeting, right? And if you have joined the meeting without a waiting room or anything like that, yeah, you get into the meeting and you're not the host. What you need to do is make sure that you log in Zoom. So go to zoom.us. And make sure you're in your account, and then launch that, and you'll be the host. You'll be all good to go. All right, so we have about 10 minutes. So what I'm going to do is just quick go through breakouts. She's got to show you though, because again, I can't show you this option. And then I'm going to get you in a breakout room just for a couple minutes, and we're going to come back. Now, remember, these are just the basics. I didn't tell you about many different functions, but there are 2 other recordings out there that you can access, and I want you to take a look at those. So breakout rooms, we are going to 5008. I had to do a little pre-planning right before all right, let's try this. I love breakout rooms, but you've got to make sure that you know how to manage.
Do automatic. And then when I'm happy with all this, I'm going to go ahead and create the rooms. And they are not started just yet. So this gives me some time to take breakout.
We're taking her back. The breakout function you will only have if you're the host.
As well as some recording that I'm going to talk about in a second. So I can see how many people are in my meeting, and then I can choose the number of rooms I would like to create. I can let Zoom do this for me automatically at random. If I want a little bit more control, I could do it manually if I prefer. Maybe have a co-host help you with that. It's maybe a little time consuming. I'm going to go ahead and do automatic. And then when I'm happy with all this, I'm going to go ahead and create the rooms. And they are not started just yet. So this gives me some time to take a look, just make sure that everything looks good. If I want to make changes, I can. I'm just going to hover over the name. I can move someone to a different room. I could even exchange one person for another person. So get all of that set up and ready. Come down here, check on the options menu. Do you want to move everybody out automatically? Would you like for them to be allowed to come back to the main session? Up to you. Maybe set a time limit, and maybe even send a countdown for when the rooms are about to close. So you've got the settings ready and the rooms ready. Now we're going to open those rooms. You can see they're in progress. You'll receive the notification. Everybody's been invited to join, and as they join, you'll notice that the main meeting that we were in starts to clear out, and everybody has joined in. So I can see the green dot that lets me know that they're joined into the breakout room. And in the breakout room, it's just taking a big Zoom meeting and making little Zoom meetings. So they have all of these basic functions that we have, in a Zoom meeting. So they can collaborate and talk a little bit. If I wanted to send a message out, I think this is a great way to send directions. Maybe, hey, everybody, work on blah, blah, blah for the next, 5 minutes, broadcast the message out to every room. And then in their breakout rooms, they have a little button that says ask for help, which is great. So if they need help, I get the notification, and then I can join room 6 and I can go and help them for a little bit. Then I can leave the rooms at will, and my co-host can join and leave the rooms as well. So they can help me out a little bit. And then leave the.
All right, so that is the gist of breakout. So you can jump in and out of different rooms. And what I suggest with your students is that when you are setting up breakout rooms, that you're telling them exactly what the instructions are when they're in the breakout. And then number 2, that you will be visiting every breakout room. So to make sure that they know there will be some supervision. If you have other adults, you can make sure by using these functions here to move those adults into different rooms as well, to support that kind of learning. So let's try this now. I want you now to feel it as a student. So I'm going to give you the directions, and then we're going to break out. So on this sheet, we have some questions. Actually, I'm going to move those questions down because I'm going to break you into 30 rooms. You can have up to 50 rooms, but I'm sure you guys won't need that many. Hopefully it will. I'm going to move these down, you guys. So I will definitely address any questions on here later, and I'll fix that. No problem. All right. So right now, what I'm going to do is break us out. In this column right here, I want you to just, in your group, talk about how you can use Zoom, any ideas that you have. That's column 1. Column 2 over here, what questions do you have? Because I will address those even when we're offline. You all have access to this. Add this to your drive so that you can refer to it later. And we will address these over here on this side. So the directions are this. Column 1, you're going to collaborate with your group and come up with different ways you can use Zoom. Column number 2, you're going to make sure that any burning questions are here. I need 1 person or 2. You guys decide, maybe 1 person does one column, the other does the other column, and capture the conversation. This is important as you have students who are breaking out, that they have some accountability. So your accountability piece is that somebody in your group or 2 people need to be the scribes and to document your conversation. We won't have too much time, so I need you guys to when you're together, I want you to quickly start throwing out some ideas, and somebody's like, yeah, I got this. I'm going into the document. You will, when you're in your groups, you'll see what number you are, okay? It'll show what group number you are. All right. We're going to go try this. We're going to try this for about 3 minutes, and I'm going to bring you back. So it's going to be quick. Now, when you do it with students, oh, here's a good question. Put that in here in the column, but wait until we get into our groups. Here we go. All right. There. Breakouts. So right now I'm doing exactly what she talked about, but you can't see it automatically. And I'm sending you out. You're going to get a pop-up that's going to ask you to join the group. Please join the group, and then I'll bring you back. So right now, let's go back to a couple things I want to share with you before we leave. So this is our document we worked on. You can see that I could check for accountability and what questions you have. So I'll take a look at these questions here, make sure that I get to those so that you have that response probably later this afternoon for sure. I want you to dig into a couple things. One, I didn't get a chance to show you how to share your screen. And so there, when you go to share your screen, there's a couple different functions. You can either go to a webinar that I did yesterday on teaching and learning, and I talk quite a bit at the end. So go to the end of the webinar and you'll see how we get to a whiteboard, and you'll see some different sharing options there. And dig into the whiteboard part too, because those of you who teach math or you want to do some kind of check-in with the students, you can have a whiteboard up and they can annotate. Some of you found the annotate button on the bottom. As a host, you have control of who can annotate. So I want you to also, this is homework for you, I want you to take a look at how you can disable and enable annotation for your students. And then the third thing is to kind of, you can actually tag the student's name on the annotation. So you can actually see who's doing the writing on the annotation of the whiteboard. So whiteboard, annotation, I want you guys to dig into that a little bit. And anything else, Val?
Some technical questions about the breakout room. I think it's visibility. So if you're on a laptop, when you go into the different functions, sometimes things will minimize. So I think the first thing to check would be that little Zoom icon at the bottom to bring things back up. Also, when some people went into the breakout room and nothing was happening, breakout rooms are sort of like a middle school dance where people are awkwardly there. So it could be that just nobody was talking. But just as you do for student, discussion groups and stuff, just making sure that they understand the expectation when they go into the breakout room. And then just some questions about the webinar recordings. All of the recordings are on our CISA 2 page. If you go to cisa2.org, at the very top, there is a link to our COVID-19 resources. The webinars that are coming up are all listed there. And if you go to the bottom, there are recordings of the webinars that have already been held. I think that's, people are saying, yeah, now that they've been at a few of the breakout rooms, they're not so shy to start talking. So yeah, the middle school dance analogy is probably appropriate for that one. And I think that's about it. The document that all of the resources are on, I'm going to pop that in the screen one more time so that you have it. All of the resources that Beth mentioned are at the bottom of that document. And you'll notice that her office hours are on the top as well. She is amazing in providing support for our people. So Beth, I'm going to encourage people to click that for support.
Absolutely, yes. Go ahead and do that. That's a Zoom room too. So it's just my private Zoom room. I have it open for an hour. You can pop in anytime, pop in and out with your questions. So here are the webinars that I was talking about. So on our CISA 2 page, take a look, especially this one here, Teaching and Learning. And next week, I do want you to know that we are continuing with free webinars for all of you. And as far as Tech Power Hour goes, again, I'm going to do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday next week, actually. And so we will be looking at Flipgrid on Monday. Super excited about Flipgrid and getting, of course, parent consent to use that. And then Seesaw on Wednesday. And then on Friday, and I don't see it up here yet, but it will be up here. On Friday, I'm going to talk about interactive digital tools. So thinking about some Google apps that are interactive, thinking about Ed Puzzle, which is a video tool, and then also Pear Deck, which is an easy add-on in your slide deck. So anyway, I hope to see you next week as well. Stay tuned. Maybe I'll see you in office hours as well. Thank you so much for connecting. I know this was fast, but you'll get that recording again. And please take care of yourself and your families. Know that we are starting with just connecting. Get that human factor in there and that instruction, that design that's going to come, but just connect with your students in any fashion that you can. And again, let us know at CISA 2 if we can do anything for you. Have a fabulous Friday and take the weekend off and enjoy that with you and your family. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everybody.